Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. It's late night, Friday, January 9th, 2026. I am, as part of, I guess, just feeling tired after having some good weeks of not being tired. My sleep schedule, I think, has messed up, and so we're starting later. Basically just overslept is what most people would call that. But yeah, it's more chronic and more of a problem than most people have, I think, for me. So yeah, we're starting late, which probably is fine. We'll scroll down the Steam DB 24-hour peak concurrent chart. Again, there's a lot I needed to work on, and none of it got worked on at all. And I don't know if I'm going to get any of it done in the weekend either. I am still making bits of progress on cleaning and decluttering my house. And like, I almost have a room that's almost presentable, which then I'm going to probably just fill with a bunch of other stuff and go in circles and try and clean a different room. I am giving more thought to just seeing if I can get somebody with a truck to come haul off a lot of stuff and just donate it. There was a thought of making a garage sale or selling some of the vintage things I have to like a vintage shop, but that thought was a year ago, and so the stuff has been sorted through for the most part now. There's still work to be done, and it still may take another year to do the rest of that work, depending on just how fast I can move and how healthy I can be in that process. But yeah, there is still a lot of work to do. But yeah, I could potentially clean out an entire room's worth of stuff just by saying take all this stuff and toss it effectively. Now that the tax year has rolled over, donating things might make more sense. Inherently, you have to make income to donate, to have write-offs for donations, and really donations are fairly limited to about $200. If you're itemizing deductions versus taking the standard deduction and taxes is hard to really do for individuals. The whole thing is a mess. So yeah, there's some more thought that needs to be put into that. I've already gotten one tax form, and we're just in January, so I may very well get a table clear enough to then immediately start thinking about doing taxes and using that table immediately for just tax purposes. Of course, that has nothing to do with video games. Video games wise, I'm still playing a little bit of Vampire Survivors, doing the last bit, put the adventures modes off to the very end, and there's a little bit of grinding in there to unlock and upgrade things. And then I think I'll be done with Vampire Survivors, and I might jump back into it and just play it for fun every now and then. I am also certainly, let's look at the most wishlisted games here, giving some consideration to not starting another game. On Tuesday I have an eye doctor's appointment. I hope that the eye doctor tells me exactly what's wrong with my eyes and tells me exactly what I need to do to fix it, and that it isn't some huge tumor or it can't be fixed or surgery thing. Ideally, we want a nice pill or a single injection and that would solve everything. Even a prescription glasses would be more preferable than surgery. But yeah, if the eye doctor just blows me off, which I have in the past been blown off by doctors, then that might be a good reason to also just take a little bit of a break and stop making footage, actually schedule some footage. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my footage is not scheduled. And we're going to start having new footage air. Unfortunately, my fear is that this eye doctor is going to say, well, let's come back in 6 months and reevaluate it and see how worse it gets in 6 months, or something stupid like that. Like, they're just going to want to try and get you on a annual or 6-month checkup scheme where they do absolutely nothing each time and are just trying to get the money for the visit. You want doctors that are too busy to see healthy patients, ideally. Or ideally you want doctors that are not capitalist in the first place and not in a capitalist country. Yeah. And I guess that's all I can say right now. You may hear more after the visit actually occurs. But yeah, I've been moving furniture and sorting through files, and that's pretty much all I've been doing outside of sleeping, which has been a big part of what I've been doing too. One of the most recent Game Grumps series ended with the characters literally just watching a video of someone else play the game. In fairness, it was a weird game where you were not getting button prompts, and it was like Space Ace, where you had to press an arrow direction and an action button to make the animation go forward, otherwise it will just play a death scene and reset. And when they remastered and re-released those games, Space Ace and 2 other games, they added a whole mode that was just a movie mode to show all the cutscenes, so you didn't actually have to play the game, because honestly that style of gameplay sucks. It's just not good. It's quick time event after quick time event before the phrase quick time event even happened. So you really can't blame Game Grumps so much for watching the video. But it does, I think, also show that even fairly big and popular and successful channels gamers are not typically that great of gamers, and they won't spend the amount of time it would take to get good at something like that. But in fairness, those old kind of games, I don't know if anybody could have gotten good at them. They were not really tested and balanced. Otherwise, I've been watching a lot of YouTube shorts, mostly of 3D prints. If I truly do get into 3D printing, I did figure out the second thing after printing a Bodhi and trying to get all of the settings set as good as possible, which, since this 3D printer that I might be getting is a hand-me-down and older, I imagine it's not going to be super detailed. If I really was going to get into it and wanted super details, I think the UV ones would probably be more my style as far as using laser light to make smaller connections instead of extruding filament. But really, I can't help but still feel like a laser cutter and a CNC machine would be even more my style, depending on what I was going to do with it and depending if I could make any money off of it. I would not be opposed to becoming a print shop of some sort. It would be maybe a nice little stream of revenue, but I don't know if there really is enough there. I kind of get the feeling it's the people making the 3D models that are making all the money, if anybody's making any money on it, other than the manufacturers of the hardware. There is a series of board games that are being turned into plastic Lego looking books. They're not really like Lego, that they have studs, but they have that shiny plastic look like a Lego piece would look, is what I mean by that. And so it looks like a book on the shelf, and then you bend the spine backwards and reveal there's an actual playboard and pieces built into it. So one game per book. Bookshelf looks like books instead of a bunch of boxes, cardboard boxes of the board games. And he's made the most popular games so far. Weirdly, the first one he made, Connect 4, though, was kind of too small. And so then the next one he made was like chess, and that then brought the scale up more, and you kind of would like all of the books to be the exact same height. Just that way it lined up very nicely, but they're also very different colors. But yeah, I question heavily whether those prints would actually print well on anything other than like the newest, bestest printers, or if what you would actually get on a cheaper printer is just a lot of failed prints and a lot of really ugly layer lines. But yeah, the second thing I would make is I really just need a small rectangular holder for drink packets to make powdered drink packets. Like, I have these plastic squarish, rectangularish pitchers in my refrigerator, and when they sit next to each other, there's a little gap in the middle that is probably about half an inch. Nobody makes a half of an inch, but potentially a foot long rectangle, which I could squeeze something in there, probably the drink package, if there was just a way to grab it on the front and pull it forward. So yeah, that might be something to make as a second print, because it's very simplistic. It's just a rectangular. Maybe I'll put a circle on the front of it so that it has a grab point that you could pull forward to. Maybe the circle part would slide in from the top, and then you could potentially have the rectangle connect to another rectangle. Yep. And then you can make kind of a train that might work well, because yeah, even printing diagonally, it may not fit the base plate any other way. So yeah, you could see like making several compartments, like 1 inch, 3 inch, 5 inch, maybe 2 or 3 1 inches, maybe 2 3 inches, interconnect them all together into one train for one specific length. I don't think that's too ambitious. Yeah, still playing Memento Mori, making a little bit more progress there. but then plateaued immediately again. That's pretty much how it goes. And then still playing Pokemon TCG Pocket, which they have a new event going on. I am kind of plateaued there too, as far as having all the cards. But I'm very close to having most of the cards. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Or should we just jump into the video game news? It's been a weird January for me in that I do seem like I'm getting more views on these live streams all of a sudden now that we're out of Christmas season. But I don't really expect there to be any video game news or anything big to happen. So, yeah. Oh, YouTube admitted that they're idiots, basically. And I don't think I'm going to get all of these achievements because some of these are DLC. Only 0.8% of players got this achievement for surviving 30 minutes with no weapons in the inverse green acres. So, I do suspect that a lot of people loved Vampire Survivors but did not finish Vampire Survivors to the extreme. Same true for Balatro. And then moved on to the next game. Which is probably a lesson game developers should realize, is that there is such a thing as over-delivering in your game and not leaving people wanting more. But yeah. Because some of this is DLC, I'm not going to get this, and because Balatro, frankly, is just too slow of a game and too difficult of a game, I'm probably not going to get all the achievements on this. You really have to have patience and love poker to play Balatro. You really have to not have seizures or be prone to seizures to play Vampire Survivors and love grinding. Oh, I didn't finish what I was saying here. We've got the Steam Award winners now being promoted on the Steam front page. Yeah, YouTube admitted basically that they're idiots, in my opinion, and they are going to update the live streams so that you can have separate stream keys for vertical and horizontal instead of them just trying to automatically crop horizontal images to be vertical images, which is a stupid idea because the odds of anybody being able to make any footage that looks good that way was almost zero. Now, here's the problem, and it's a problem of my own making. I don't think my computer is powerful enough to stream two things at the same time. Not using OBS. Streamlabs was doing that, and that's almost certainly why YouTube, in their slow way, was rushing to introduce dual streaming as a native thing, because they just didn't want people getting tutorials to use Streamlabs and only use Streamlabs. There's a lot of content creators, I'm sure, that are just using like the web page or just using something other than Streamlabs like OBS that doesn't have that functionality. OBS should come out with that functionality very quickly and not have a plugin be the thing you have to rely on. But either way, it doesn't really feel like my computer can handle dual streaming, so I need to try and renew interest in finishing and building my new computer. But yeah, even at that, I don't know how I could get these web pages to look good both in vertical and horizontal, it would certainly be a intriguing challenge. It would probably go back to the idea of just like having the web page show all of the information as columns and duplicating all of the HTML, so that I would have like one big 4K screen, and on the left of this vertical format there would be the horizontal format of the page. And yeah, as far as vertical streaming when making game footage, that's probably a little bit easier, like starting with something horizontal and then just squishing it down to take up the center part of a vertical image makes a lot more sense. I saw a 3D printing time-lapse trick tutorial, and basically what it is they 3D printed a holder on the edge of their printer to hold the shutter button, like a Bluetooth button that would take a picture on a camera. The camera is locked down in place looking at the print, and every time the 3D printer goes all the way to the left, it just pushes the button to take one photo, which is an intriguingly roundabout way of doing it. It certainly isn't what I would have first thought of. I would have probably screwed it up and just wanted a time-lapse functionality where it would take a picture every few minutes or so, and then you probably would have to sort through it. But yeah, time-lapse 3D prints are probably a great example of the devaluation of that video footage, because you're taking several hours of prints usually and converting it into 30 seconds of footage. I'm still watching Fallout 76 and a few things. Otherwise, there's this anime on Hulu, The Wandering Witch, I think might be the name of it, and I still don't really understand what in the world is going on with that story. It seems like it is just an anthology series telling random stories written by random people, and it doesn't seem to have any plot at all, or any theme or meaning at all. But yeah, Fallout 76, they actually made it at the very end of the most recent episode into the Las Vegas Strip, which I'm somewhat peeved that they even showed on a sign that said Las Vegas, not New Vegas. And I saw on Reddit that people were complaining about it, and you know, I feel like there probably is some real validity to the complaints they're making, that they are just kind of rushing through Las Vegas and the surrounding area, showing you things you might expect to be there as far as the different factions that were in the New Vegas game, and then resolving to basically say they're all dead, or they're all about to die, or they're all destroyed. And when they get to the Las Vegas Strip, it is all destroyed. And so, yeah, there was a mention of Freeside, and so maybe there will be actual people at Freeside, but it does just kind of feel like their plan here was to use Las Vegas as a sales pitch, but didn't have any more of a plan at all as far as what was going to happen there. And yeah, it's not like they're telling an interesting story with the main characters at all. They're people that deeply loved New Vegas, and to see that there basically isn't anything being shown in the series really should have just is really disappointing, I'm sure, to them, and it's a little disappointing to me. But I just feel like what they really should have done is gone to a completely different location. If the idea is that they are moving to the east, to the Commonwealth, that could have been done in several ways differently. They could have gone up towards a generic Canada, and they could have gone south towards Mexico. Those are areas that have not really been shown well at all. And the whole story, and the idea that they basically walked from LA to Las Vegas is insane anyways. But yeah, I wouldn't say in the abstract I'm hating Fallout on Amazon Prime Season 2, but I could see certainly where fans of the game are going to just get less and less fed, and there's just this hope that there will be a secondary fandom that's much bigger that are fans of the TV show. And inherently, I guess that is the problem with a lot of these video game to TV show translations, is that even if they get popular, they're getting popular by ignoring a very fickle video game fandom in favor of building a bigger fandom. Same is true with like the comic book movies. If you had made the Marvel comic book movies for the comic book fans, they would have never sold enough tickets to be profitable. They had to expand it to a new audience. They also introduced the idea that the main female protagonist, who they're barely paying attention to, was addicted to Buffout through no fault of her own, and as soon as she got addicted to Buffout, she became a completely different person, and more violent and more willing to engage in violence, which maybe that is the right way to go with that character, to just say, hey, this character was too clean of a character. Yeah. Of course, she could have also been violent and more aggressive after she'd been crucified by the Legion. You lose a lot of the saccharine sweet elements of her. Saw someone look at a preview of Pathologic 3. Pathologic 3 feels more text-based than I thought it would be. You do walk around and do things, but it does just seem like a lot of it is interviewing people and talking. Speaking of talking, I think I'm already losing steam. I still need to figure out why these pages are not loading. There is something I'm doing here that's slowing down the process. See if I can work on that later. It's not even letting me drag that to a new tab. Right. Where are we now? I think we had already looked at the Game of the Year awards. Yeah. Another Steam Deck refurbs. Another 3D print I found that looked interesting was to be a dock for a Steam Deck that had then an arcade stick and buttons connected to it, which that is an intriguing twist on this. I don't know what's going on here. Like I'm trying to hit the reload button and it's not working. Yeah. And I imagine the most played games on the Steam Deck in general are still the same. Yeah. Oh, I did have an idea about making comic books for the blind. And yeah, if I had some kind of like Patreon or Kickstarter thing that I thought I could really go through and deliver, I think I could do that. Like the first thing is you would need at least one UV printer, which would cost probably about $3,000. Then you probably would need a document scanner for another $700, and then you would need to have clients and do some kind of polls to say which comics do you guys want the most to work on, and you basically need an artist to do it. The UV printer actually helps with the whole process quite a bit, so you can literally just use a document scanner to scan a floppy comic and then print it using a special mode on clear sheets of transparency paper, I would assume is what you're going to do. Clear sheets of that, and that's all you literally would have to do is just scan the image, print it in a special mode. Yeah. Then the only real work to make comics for the blind would be scanning in the text and then correcting it and typing it and reading the text. And for each individual floppy comic, the amount of text, I mean, those comics usually have about 16 pages of text in them in the first place, so yeah, scanning that in, converting it into Braille dots, and then using the UV printer to print on a second sheet of the Braille dots. And you probably could put all of the text on a single floppy comic on 1 or 2 sheets of acrylic, and then you could literally have just in parentheses turn the page. So you would do like one line. If you wanted to do it really nice, you would want to have some kind of numbering system added to it where they could feel a number on the picture of the embossed pictures of the comic to see where the text bubble was, and then they would go to the second sheet to read the text. Yeah. And honestly, if you blew the whole thing up to a much higher scale, you could probably just print all of the text and all of the pictures on one giant sheet. But I don't think that would work particularly well, because you'd want this to just be, here is the extra packet to the comic. Zig is on the chat. He's that sounds good. He's gonna give me his old 3D printer at the gamer meetup. Yeah, I'm planning on being there, but I'm also very inconsistent, so apologies if somehow I get sick and don't show up. Speaking of people who I was thinking about need a Patreon, I think Zig in particular probably should think about doing a Patreon for his YouTube channel and for his game, as far as putting out special content that's first shown on Patreon. I think that might help him, certainly. And then he made a new video on his YouTube channel, and then he very quickly made another video on his YouTube channel, which probably hurt the views of his first new video. And so there is YouTube scheduling things that people, content creators like me, have to be careful about. You don't want to put any more than basically 2 videos out per day, and you want to separate the videos by at least an hour. Otherwise, the YouTube recommendation algorithm won't put out notifications. But yeah, there is, for most content creators, a good argument to be much more consistent and just put out like 1 video per week at a very specific time on a very specific day. And yet, yeah, if somebody asks a question, you don't really need to make a video response as quickly as Zig did. Zig is, I think, too nice of a guy, perhaps. When it comes to content creators, you have to wrangle your viewership a little bit more like cats. Otherwise, once you start to become big, if you ever do get to become big, you'll have people pulling you in hundreds of different directions and stretching you thin. But yeah, I do think Zig is the type of content creator, game developer, that would benefit from having a Kickstarter, not a Kickstarter, a Patreon. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, he says he has a Patreon, but it's dormant. Yeah, I have a Patreon that's pretty much dormant too, and they like to lock them down, and you have to relaunch them. But yeah, I don't really even like Patreon as a company, in particular, because it's all going through PayPal. But yeah. For my channel, having a lot of subs, I haven't put anything out on my Patreon that's exclusive, and without exclusives, there's just not a lot of reason why people would support you. But also, I'm a video game critic, so people don't really have a good reason to support critics. And then Zig says he got 3 new subs, which, yeah, that's a good number for a few days, few weeks. Heck, even for me, 3 new subs would be helpful. Unfortunately, YouTube has really made it more of a case where you need the right kind of subs that are just going to watch a ton of your content, because I have 1,000 subs, but I definitely am not getting 1,000 views on my videos, let alone getting them to all watch anywhere close to 100% of the footage I put out, or even close to getting the watch time. I'm still 2,000 or 3,000 watch hours away from being in the YouTube Partner Program, or even being considered to be in the YouTube Partner Program. Let's see, Zig is on a delay. He says he's currently coding a boss battle for people to test on the game, and I've been making spells for the game. It's a lot of work. All of it. Yep, game development is a lot of work. I've been watching a tutorial of just the basics of making an RPG game in Godot, and 5 episodes got, in a very abridged format, only got them to a very rough template of what a game would look like, as far as setting the foundation down, not really addressing the story at all, the music at all, the writing, the characterization, or anything like that. It was just, here's how you make a sprite, and here's how you make attacks. Characters attack other sprite characters, things like that. And while I am always shocked at how little code it takes in Godot to get to that point, there is a vast divide between what the tutorials show in making games and what the reality of the situation really is that you're going to spend years making a good game, and there's going to be just 60 plus hours of gameplay usually in a good game. And yeah, the 2-hour games, the 15-minute games, this is made in RPG Maker type games that really are trying to make it seem like they're a lot longer, don't cut the mustard. Yeah. Zig says he likes to help when he can, in reference to him making that second video. If I have time, he doesn't mind posting a quick video. Plus, he ran out of ideas anyways. Yeah. There definitely are content creators who are even medium-sized that have people that will post questions, and they will make that part of their weekly footage, as far as here's the question from a fandom. And the dirty little secret, and this is an old radio secret, is that a lot of times the questions, even in big things like Game Informer, are made up. They are ideas that they wanted to address, the content creator wanted to address in a interesting way, or they wanted the idea to sound like it was more of a popular idea anyways. So if you want to do something, you do a little bit of theater of the mind / lying, and you just say that you make up a fake person. Usually it's the same fake person. You just have a sock puppet account that you're saying, hey, this person asked this question, when that person doesn't really exist at all. It's just you wanting to address a topic. It's an interesting narrative device. Certainly authors do it all the time too. When they're telling a story, they create a character to bring up an idea or discuss an idea. So if you were doing a weekly or even monthly video podcast, or video in general, you just think of 1 to 3 ideas, make some fake accounts, and you address them like you have fandoms. And faking like you have fans and viewers is kind of a great way to grow viewers. Honestly, I should be doing it a lot myself, but yeah, I'm not, but I should be. Zig later says, I just printed a headphones holder for my desk with a custom Zig imprint in the design. Thought it would be cool merch, maybe. Depends heavily on whether you're promoting yourself or you're promoting your game. You're gonna probably need to pick one, and I would say promote the game first, because yeah, you certainly would do better having a successful game on Steam, I think, than having a successful YouTube channel. It says right now he's running into size issues as the game has grown. I had to spend time with object calling, longer compile times, texture mapping problems, etc. Also, finding everything in code is becoming more and more tedious. Yep, scaling up and sizing issues can be a nightmare, and like, I have never used GameMaker, but I question how much GameMaker can scale. From a video game critic outside looking in, I don't think I've ever seen anything made with GameMaker, and let's face it, GameMaker is from the same people that makes RPG Maker. I've never seen that scale very large. You're not getting an Unreal Engine style giant game. You're not getting GTA 6 from something like that. There are scaling issues because Zig is only one person doing the code too, and he probably has a lot of room for improvement for optimizing his code, but I would suspect that it might be the GameMaker engine is not really optimized particularly well either. And some of those things I could say, it's too late for Zig to switch to the Godot engine, but some of those things for his next game might be addressed by using Godot. For instance, compile times don't exist in the Godot engine. Not when you're just running the game. It's a click the play button and it instantly plays. I've never heard anything as far as object calling or texture map being a problem in the Godot engine, but the Godot engine is also kind of new, so maybe. And the way GD scripts work in the Godot engine are really designed to make code much more segregated and segmented. So you, unlike C++ code, which is something I'd be more familiar with, where all the code would just be in your main code file for the most part, GD scripts want you to put scripts specifically in certain visual objects. So if you have a player character sprite, that's where you would put the code for the player character. If you have an enemy character sprite, that's where you put the code for the enemy characters. It does create a situation where you can't print out everything into a giant bunch of paper, but that's a terrible way to code that only old people like me might do. And you still would have to jump around, so just good naming conventions and understanding things would help a bit. And if you really need to add C++ code, you do have to jump down into a lower level in Godot to do C++ code, but a lot of it's abstracted away. A lot of the functions you do are just like really, really simple. One of the things I saw in Godot that caught my eye in particular is that if you divide an integer by an integer, it will pop up a warning when you hit when you type it in immediately, instead of like when you hit play to run the scene. And you can then just check a checkbox and it will add an extra line of code into the GD script to just ignore that warning. Whereas in my day of programming in C++, if you had a warning and you were just ignoring it, you would just ignore it. And like, it would just happen every single time you compared it. As far as I know, there was no way to tell it to ignore that warning. Now I don't know if you ignore that warning always in the future, or if you only ignore that warning in that one instance. But boy, does that help in bigger code when you can individually say, hey, we know about this warning and we don't care. And the reason it's giving a warning for dividing two integers is that you're just not going to get a result that isn't an integer then, so it's not going to be precise. If you took like 2 or 5 divided by 2, for example, would be 5 divided by 2 in real worlds would be 2.5, 2.5, I think, if I'm going to do some bad math here. But when you're doing integers, it's just going to say it goes into it 2 times. And basically it's doing mod. And there probably is just a way to do 5 mod 2 and write better code so you wouldn't get that warning in particular. But yeah, when you divide 2 integers in Godot, I'm pretty sure you get an integer result, which would be 2, which wouldn't be accurate, but people probably don't care too much. Zig is catching up to the delay. He says Godot doesn't have a compile time. How does that work? The compiler needs to link all the libraries and assets before the build gets executed, and this is how errors are caught in the compiler. Every programming language that I've known needs a compiler. The larger a file, the longer the compilation time. My understanding on how it works in Godot is that, yes, when you are finally done with the program, you are going to compile it. If you need to spit out a .exe or .apk or whatever iOS iPhones use, there is a compile there, but I don't even think that's particularly too big of a deal. But what happens when you're dealing with Godot is that any libraries that are being used, which most of the libraries are just built into the Godot itself, any libraries that are used are loaded up when you first load the project. And I will say, loading up the project on Godot can be a little slow, so you would just leave Godot running. But at that point, the Godot engine that you're developing in is exactly the same as the Godot engine that the game is going to be played in. So when you hit play scene, everything is already loaded up. All the libraries and everything are like that, and it's just really optimized, and it is just a much newer way of thinking as far as it goes. When you make Godot games, you just really aren't using that many extra libraries. Anyways, you just kind of don't need them. It is so optimized to it. At least that's my understanding on it. But yeah, yes, there is a compile time when you want the final product, but you don't make the final product until you are done. So you just hit play and test it out that way. But yeah, my experience for what little I've done with Godot myself has been way better than what using C++ many years ago was like, where yes, you would have to hit run, and then you would have to wait several minutes for even a simple program for it to compile everything. Most of the libraries, I imagine, are already pretty pre-compiled anyways. There might be a lack of optimization there in that, but I don't know how much space saving you really need in game development, that if your executable is 10 megabytes versus being 5 megabytes if you spent a lot more time optimizing and removing parts of the code. I don't know how much that really would benefit you. Zig says he'll probably write his own game engine for this next game, as graphics programming has been interesting me lately. That is way too ambitious. I'm going to try to say this as nicely as possible, but do not do that. Yeah, you will fall down such a pitfall. It will suck up all of your life, and you'll come out with a product that is not going to be even satisfactory to you. Lean on the shoulders of other giants who've already done it. If you want to get into engine programming, specifically graphics programming, read the source code of the Godot engine and become a contributor to that, or any other open source game engine you might find. Doesn't have to be Godot, but don't try to go it on your own. That way lies madness. The few companies that do have their own engines that are also successful all have one thing in common: they are owned by billion-dollar corporations that can hire lots of people and can work on those engines forever. ZeniMax is the prime example of a company that runs their own game engine for the Elder Scrolls. Yeah. Yeah. The engine running Fallout and Elder Scrolls is a custom engine, and that is the prime example of even having infinite amount of time and infinite amount of monies and still not really having a good engine with their, I believe it's called the Gamebryo engine. Yeah, it's just not a good engine, and I do think that they might be moving over to Unreal Engine. Yeah. The only reason why you really want to write your own engine is if there was some reason other in-game engines just couldn't hack it. It was basically maybe 12-15 years ago that every single game company was trying to write their own engine, because the CEOs and the accountants were telling them that would save them money instead of paying licensing fees, and every single one of those companies in the entire game industry failed to really achieve that. And now you really just have people who are doing it out of stubbornness and matters of pride, with like the Crysis engine and the Source engine at Valve. The Source engine is another great example of somebody writing their own engine, and the Source engine originally made a lot of sense to write their own engine because there wasn't anything doing the level of physics that they wanted for Half-Life 1 and such, but it never got adopted. It never got successful, really. If Valve was money driven, they would have long since abandoned it for something like the Unreal Engine. Although there is Epic fighting with Valve, so they probably wouldn't use that engine. Zig says he looked it up. Godot acts like JavaScript, where it is being interpreted at runtime, as the compiled times are not as high. Yeah, it's that phrase just-in-time compilation. I think that's how Android apps run too, is the just-in-time compilation. Yeah, and with modern hardware, I think that works great. Now, 20 years ago, just-in-time compilation probably wouldn't have worked at all. But yeah, computer hardware these days is usually powerful enough for that. So yeah, it gets rid of the need for long build times, which that alone will save you hours upon hours of sitting around and waiting. I certainly remember when I was writing code in my C++ classes, you would start something compiling and you'd have like 5 minutes. Yep. Yeah, you would just sit there and that really taught me when I was coding, when I was sitting there waiting for things to compile, it really taught me to be very cautious about how I was coding to make sure the code would actually work before I hit the compile button, and how to think about a program just in my mind. And so a lot of the programming I was doing, and even now when I'm doing things, a lot of it is just in a simulation running in my brain, and then I am having to translate that and type it into an actual computer after the fact. Which, if you can do that, that's great. But if you also are imagining things are going to work and then all of a sudden it doesn't work when you actually type it in, that can be fairly annoying. Yeah, Zig says, but the trade-off for the just-in-time compilation, or however the Godot does it, is performance. Performance on the Godot engine that I've seen seems to be great. Like, so yes, there might be a trade-off theoretically in performance. I don't know if it really is going to be noticed by anybody, particularly if you are making a 2D game. But yeah, there is just a ton of optimization going there. And so yes, there always have to be trade-offs, and so theoretically there is a trade-off in performance. And yes, a pre-compiled, pre-built program will always beat a just-in-time compiled program. But the reason why people are not doing pre-compiled programs is because that means you have to have a pre-compiled program basically for every different style of hardware, and Godot in particular is designed to be made so it could be on cell phones if you make a mobile app, or it could be on AMD or Intel computers, or so yeah, performance in games is always a consideration, but I don't think the base there matters. And I'm still pretty sure, although I am not an expert on Godot, that once you actually build the script, the just-in-time compilation goes away anyways, and it is just a pre-compiled program at that. So if you were to actually build the APK for an Android app, it is then as built as it's going to be. Although that's perhaps a bad example, because even the APKs still have just-in-time elements to them. I would be shocked if there was anybody out there claiming that GameMaker is more performant than the Godot engine is. And even if it was, I'm pretty sure GameMaker is closed source, so optimizations can happen every day on Godot. Not so much, I don't think, with GameMaker. Anyways, moving on, let's go through the Video Games Chronicle articles, otherwise I'm going to be here all night. I'm probably going to be awake all night anyways, but I really need to be awake for my eye doctor appointment on Tuesday, and so I don't want to encourage staying up all night. Let's see, still didn't fix any of this. See, here's a quote: "As usual, we do what Nintendo don't." End quote. A peripheral farm, the brand, quote, fixes Switch 2's new Joy-Cons. What are they claiming was broken with them? It looks like these are just skins over a Joy-Con. Yeah. seems like they are just colors. So this is D brand's version of the purple and green covers. It's barely video game news. Yeah, there's several Nintendo Switch 3D prints out there to hold games and things like that, but nothing specifically for the like Switch 2 that looked too interesting to me. So yeah, I'm thinking about like Christmas gifts. One of the things I'm also thinking about 3D prints is a lot of the filament extruders feel like they extrude what they call poop, just unused bits of filament, and maybe that's only for color changing ones in particular, and then people end up with a lot of this filament poop, and then there seems to be no good way to get rid of it, or find some like box you could 3D print into it and have like a weighted desk cube full of the trash to reuse it. But yeah, that is a slight concern. Yeah, I was thinking about printing coasters with turtles on it, but if I print in plastic a coaster with a turtle on it, I'm literally making more microplastics that are probably hurting and killing turtles in the real world. So I don't know if that wouldn't be too ironic, but yeah, I know somebody who's obsessed with turtles, so for Christmas gifts, if I were to make coasters or something with turtles on it, or like Christmas tree ornaments, they would go crazy for that. Yeah. Moving on, Nintendo Switch 2's latest GameCube game is now live, bringing the total to 8 games. What is it? Showing us a picture of something, but I couldn't really tell you what it is. Is it Fire Emblem Path of Radiance? Yes. Alright. The Division 3 will have as big an impact as the Division 1, the producer says. Okay. Xbox and Obsidian's Avowed is coming to PS5 with new modes and content. I don't think Avowed ever really caught people's attention. Let's see. Clair Obscur, Ghost of Yotai, Arc Raiders, and Dispatch topped the DICE Awards nominees. This is just all too small. Let's see if we bump. Yeah, that looks better. At least temporarily. We'll bump the size up. But still, the text is too small for me to read. Windows did suggest that I should have turned up the text size to 150%. Yeah. We really are living in a world where I think things... Zig says PLA is made of starch and is supposedly safe. Oh, that's good to know. I hadn't really looked into it. I'm doing something kind of crazy with plastics right now. Is that I have this old TV with a remote, and the remote had some kind of sticky breakdown to it on the back. It was kind of rubbery something, and I just put it in a cup with about 20% acetone, the rest water, just to see if I could get this sticky, gooey, turning to oil thing off the remote, and just immerse the remote in acetone. And honestly, I think I'm destroying the remote, and I'm just going to toss the remote and toss the TV itself. because it is a 720 TV with a dead pixel scratch in it, and yeah, it is probably 15 plus years old, so it's not worth the $10 you might sell it for the space and the weight of it. Yeah, Zig says there's tons of versions of filament that can fit your needs. I will say the one I have is beginner, so I wouldn't shell out a lot on it. He got PLA plus, which is safe and slightly stronger than the basic, but they have carbon fiber, wood, marble, metal foam, etc. Yeah, I know there's a lot of really exotic filaments. Yeah, it's not the filaments for sure that's going to be the problem. What's going to be the problem is finding 3D prints or paying for 3D prints, because yeah, I think that is where I'm gonna go really crazy with it. Like the very first thing I probably would shell out a lot of money for would be just a dryer, a filament dryer that would make sure the filament is nice and lacking in moisture, because I hear that is the #1 problem with 3D printing, is that even a brand new sealed in bag filament may have way more moisture. Yeah, Zig says, sorry, PLA is cornstarch or sugarcane. Okay, well, that might be slightly better. I'd have to really research, though, how much it breaks down. And it's really not, I don't personally care about the environment that much, but if you were a huge fan of turtles and the perception of the person getting the thing is that this is plastic and all plastic ends up as microplastics, which maybe even PLA starts as cornstarch but doesn't break down and isn't actually biodegradable in a reasonable amount of time, then that could still be an issue to the end consumer. I actually prefer plastic, and a good strong plastic in all my things I'm eating over glass, even though glass is probably better for you. Having glass not break on you is way more important to me. Zig says, hey, I have been making my 3D prints, just give me dimensions and I can help you. He uses Fusion 360, it's super easy. Yeah, Zig much more artistic than me. Yeah, there probably will be some back and forth there when I get set up. First I would exhaust the 3D printer I have and get it going, and then if all of a sudden there is some thoughts there of I need a lot more printed or I need something designed better, I'd go back to Zig. But I want to take the first steps of the journey myself, but then probably pretty quickly my printer will be slow enough that I would need help. So yeah, I am planning on this being a back and forth relationship, really. Alright, the creator of Phasmophobia is launching a publishing label which seeks to champion indie games. Yeah. The publisher says it will reject AI generated in blockchain elements. It's interesting they're still talking about blockchain elements. Alright, well, we have enough news here where I'm going to have to take a bathroom break, so now is as good of a time as any. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. So let's see. Zig commented several things while I was in the bathroom. Do I have extra screws? Well, I have a ton of extra screws, and certainly I can order any kind of screws that are needed. I have calipers, so I could also measure any hole if it is like a 2M or 3M, and certainly have the capability of looking up what is needed. So yes, the 3D printer missing a screw is not a problem to me. I can certainly address that just fine. Yeah. And I have also a magnetic sweeper, so if I happen to drop any screws and lose them, I can sweep that magnetic sweeper to find the screws. In the future, that might be something you might want to get one of those too, although it is probably overkill. Just a vacuum cleaner, or very often, will work to find a lost screw. But things, when I lose things in particular, and this has nothing to do with video games, it often feels like those things just fall into a pocket dimension and then they fall back out 6 months later. So yeah, but yeah, I can handle missing screws, no problem, if Zig is still listening. Speaking of 3D printing, still, this is not hopefully going to become the 3D printing live streams in the future. There is this YouTuber, I don't know his name, he's obviously Asian, and he's teaching room decorating and design and furniture placement using the concept of feng shui. Now, I don't believe any of the mysticism in feng shui personally. I'll start with that caveat, but I do believe that there's probably a lot of logic, thousands of years of people having certain vibes based on either logical reasons or just the reason being that that people's brains work generally the same way. So the thing that this feng shui furniture organizer often says is you don't put the headboard of a bed right next to a window because all of the birds and monkeys will attack you. Well, maybe in the past birds and monkeys might go break through a window and attack you, and you don't want your head there, but more realistically, that's probably just, it will give you bad vibes. A human brain will feel bad about that, or it will make noise from outside be heard better, might be the more logical reason. So yeah, I think he does a pretty good job and has pretty good ideas as far as furniture organization and just making the best use of room. And as somebody who has way too much stuff in their house, you have to really work to make the best use of each room. Anyways, so what does this have to do with 3D printing? He has these little pretty ugly 3D printed pieces of furniture. So he'll print out a blueprint, which you can find online, of somebody's apartment or house. Often it's about the size of an apartment. And then he'll move these 3D prints of a bed, of a bookshelf, of a nightstand, things like that around. And I'd like to 3D print that. But the problem there is that the scale is going to be pretty small as far as just an assortment of furniture. And really you would need, I'd really like a design of several different pieces of furniture, because they make bookcases, for instance, of all different types of widths and depths, and they're pretty inconsistent. You would ideally want Amazon to have some kind of service where if you were thinking about buying a bookshelf, you could pay $1 and they would send you a 3D print to scale and a blueprint of your house, or an outline of your house to scale. Blueprints tend to be 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. So that's a pretty small scale there, because if you say you have a 25-inch wide bookshelf, well, then that would be 1/2 of an inch and then some small fraction that you would have to print things at. And so, yeah, it's like 1:48 roughly ratio, as far as me looking into this. I think it is that way. And so it's much smaller than like dollhouse furniture that you'd have to 3D print. And I just question whether anything short of a like really high-end resin printer could really make that kind of furniture to scale. But I like a set like that of furniture to decorate. Particularly, I think that might be a product that would be a great thing for real estate agents and decorators to have in their offices. A kid comes in, or a parent with a kid comes in, and the kid starts playing with it like it's Lego, or the adults can play with it to show the design and layout. Now, normally you would just draw pictures, but the thing about drawing pictures is it's very easy to get the scale wrong. It's very easy to put a bookshelf somewhere that it doesn't fit, or it just doesn't have that same feel to it. Yeah. Zig says, okay, thanks. He's been looking for the screw and he hasn't been able to find it. Yeah, I know the feeling. It really sucks to do that. What sucks on the other end of that is you go to Amazon and you buy an assortment of screws, and you're going to end up spending anywhere from $10 to maybe even $20 for a big amount of screws, way more than you'd ever use in a lifetime. Although you should probably do it while you're young, and you might use it in a lifetime. And then you just overpay to have a whole bunch of extras. And yeah, that saves you time. Is worth a lot more than money, but it does really suck. Like, there's a lot of home improvement things that I've gotten, like wall anchors to put pictures on the wall, for instance. Like a set like that is, I have like tons and tons of wall anchors because of that, when really I only needed 5. But in the old days, you could usually get these kinds of things going to like Home Depots and Lowe's, but even now the assortment of what you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's is not particularly great, and it's not particularly cheaper either. It's just easier to get something on Amazon for a lot of these things and shop around, and yeah, maybe you're getting a lower quality product, but a lot of times you just don't care when it comes down to screws and things like and stuff like that. But yeah, that's enough 3D talk. Let's get back to the Video Games Chronicle articles. So yeah, Phasmophobia's creator is launching a new Kinetic publishing to champion indies. Yeah, let's see where it is set. I feel like a lot of these publishing people really are set probably in a good place for them, but in a bad place for a lot of game developers, because it really is physical. If you can't go down to the office and actually talk to somebody, how much are they really going to work with you? Because yeah, and that basically leaves you with, if you are trying to be a game developer, having to either in the United States work out of LA, maybe New York, maybe Austin. Frisco, Texas, which is north of Dallas, has a couple of game development things, and the big one would be Redmond, Washington, where Microsoft and Valve are. So out of the entire United States, there's really only about 5 good locations to live, to run a game company if you want to deal with any kind of publisher or anything like that. Otherwise, it's all just telecommuting, and there's just no telling. And that is kind of the problem of starting a publishing company too, is that you never know how good they're going to be at publishing and how successful there are. There's been several people who have started publishing companies for it to really only fail. And like Devolver Digital has its own little niche thing as far as what it publishes. Zig says, I already have 2 sets of screws I don't use, lol. Yeah, you're probably going to end up having a bunch. And something like a tackle box may not be a bad idea to just start with, as far as in fact, I have a tackle box that I'm trying to move a bunch of my stuff, my electrical stuff into. But also Gridfinity is a thought too, since we're talking about 3D printing. But yeah, you're going to end up having, I don't think you use M1 screws that much, and I don't think you would use M6 or above in the metric style screws, but then there's several different lengths you might need for an M2, M3, M4, and then screws as far as the non-metric style are going to be all over the place, and there's all different types of things. And so yeah, drywall screws are what you generally might want for screwing in pictures and things if you were going to get a good support there, because yeah, that's what you would use to drive sheetrock into the studs of a house. So if you're going to hang paintings on those types of screws, drywall screws work, but they also have picture hanging kits that'll look a lot nicer that have just small little nails and screws to use. Self-tapping screws for metal work and all kinds of different screws depending on your projects. But yeah, I think 3D printing uses completely different screws. It'd be nice if there was a whole standard. Yeah. But yeah, you're going to end up with just a whole bunch of stuff, and being organized with the stuff makes a lot of sense. That's another thing I thought about 3D printing, is just a Lego sorting tray to sort Legos when building them into different compartments. Yep. Anyways, we were talking about video game news. Zig says that's what happened to Chucklefish. Well, I don't know if they failed, but they had controversy and had Stardew Valley drop off. Yeah. I don't remember the Chucklefish one, but it happens very often. Like, generally, publishers suck, and most of them don't have enough money to really be publishers in the first place. And yeah, but if you're indie, that is difficult too, because then you aren't getting a ton of extra money to develop your game for 4 years up front, and you aren't getting a ton of advertisement. But yeah, there's many people who have given speeches and talked about what you need to know before getting into the devil's deal of working with a publisher. Though I do like the idea of rejecting AI generated and blockchain elements. For the most part, I think blockchain elements are going away. Let's see, Nintendo's new My Mario Kids range will go on sale in the US and Europe next month. This looks like this is Mario stuff for a younger kid, which I may have one younger kid in my life that this might be something to think about. But for the most part, the kids in my life are a little too old for this. Switch 2 sales have slowed over Christmas, down 35% compared to the Switch 1 launch. No duh, there was not a big launch really. I would say, unfortunately, Metroid Prime 4 was not pushed or promoted, but also it probably wasn't going to be that big of a launch as far as games go anyways. And you could probably put about 28% of that 35% down to just the economy. The amount of jobs gained was low again this quarter. As far as what's actually being reported, it's probably much lower than that in reality. And unemployment is at like 4.4% in the United States, which that is really a straight up lie, because the way unemployment is calculated is really just the people who are recently unemployed or still getting unemployment benefits. Not everybody in the United States qualifies and gets unemployment benefits to begin with, and unemployment benefits run out after 6 months based on the state's rules, and if and only if there is an extension, it might go up to like 2 years for some people, but there hasn't been an extension in a long time. The real unemployment numbers is probably closer to 50 or 60% of all people in the United States when you include people of working ages, and is even higher if you include people outside of working age. Obviously, a 2-year-old is not employable yet. Who knows what the laws may change. But yeah, and it's always been close to 50% as far as unemployment, because there has always been a case where women were not considered employed or employable, even though they may have been doing a lot of work at home, taking care of babies and the household in general. But yeah, the employment numbers have always been really a lie. But yeah, there's a lot of old people that are not working, obviously, and are retired. There's a lot of underage people that are not working and are retired. And then there are a lot of people that just are underemployed, which they never really talk about underemployment, where they have good levels of education and good degrees, and they just are still working at jobs that are beneath their level of education. But yeah, the economy is not great. Moving on, Xbox Developer Direct is coming later this month, featuring Fable, Forza, and Game Freak. This would be the game from Game Freak that is not Pokemon. This actor, this British actor, I don't know how much he really is going to be in the Fable game. He may be in a short scene, but like most British actors, I wouldn't expect him to do too much work. He's kind of a comedic actor, and I've never seen him stick with anything for too long, although he does voice the main character in Crapopolis animation, which they put out another episode of that, so I guess maybe it's not canceled. They didn't really end the series in a way that felt like it should be canceled, but who knows, it might be canceled. I wouldn't really be too upset if it was. is just another one of those Fox comedy shows that are either garbage if they go too long or not worth watching in the first place. Let's see. Nintendo Switch 2's Mario Tennis Fever will have the most playable characters in the series history. Is this a new game? Yeah. Several new characters, Goomba, Nabbit, Piranha Plant, Baby Wario, and Baby Waluigi all make their debut. So it seems like they're introducing a bunch of smaller characters. Extra. Which, it's interesting since it seems like there's only 4 metrics to differentiate how the characters play, how much variety you can get from that, but since they are going into fractions here, it isn't just 4 to the power of 5 as far as the possible variations, which would already be a huge number. Yeah, the first Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Con color variants have been announced and they're out next month. Okay, so now we can see why D-Brand came out with their alternative skins, is that this is very, very subtle in what Nintendo is offering as far as this. I assume this is teal or aquamarine, and this lavender. I wish I had taken an actual class. I wish I'd paid attention and actually liked any of my art classes. I only took a couple in school, but just a class in memorizing and knowing the names of colors would be helpful. Probably to every male, but also every female out there. But yeah, I guess in kindergarten they probably tried to teach me red, green, and blue and struggled to go any further than that with the kids they were dealing with. But yeah, I don't hate the subtleness of this, but if I was a fan of lavender, I would be kind of peeved that it's still mostly black. I wonder if Nintendo knows something that D-Brand doesn't, that maybe the black hides fingerprints a lot better, which it may very well do, and that if this was just all lavender, it would look weird in one way or another. I also wouldn't be surprised if it isn't just a cheapness on Nintendo's part, because Nintendo is fairly cheap and they just have these different pieces printed in a different color at one factory, and then all the other pieces are printed at a different factory, which yeah. I would assume most of these components are being made in factories in China, the plastic components. Maybe not the circuitry on the inside, but probably that too. And with Japan and China increasingly at odds with each other, it might be that we see these peripherals not getting made or becoming scarce. Which, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. I wouldn't be surprised if anything these days. There might be full-on world wars starting pretty quickly, so we might see drastic changes, things that my generation have not lived through, and future younger generations than mine have not lived through. At which point we might see some crazy things like rationing and just massive scarcity altogether. Yeah. And yeah, that might make it very hard to get games, and it might actually help content creators like me who could play games and let people see games that people couldn't afford, assuming they could still afford the internet in general. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the fired Rockstar game developers fight for payroll relief at employment tribunal hearing. Rockstar claims the fired staff were breaching confidentiality agreements. This is the UK group of people that were fired. UK and Canada people that were fired. But then there's also a whole Ubisoft office that was shut down as soon as it was unionized, and that's a completely different story. Which, yeah, I will leave it at that. The story is developing, but it definitely seems like there's more and more union busting like activities going on. South Park is coming to Fortnite this week. Here's the first trailer. I don't think I really need to watch the trailer, but we can see it seems like it is fairly standard to put kids and small characters in robots, and it seems like it's fairly standard in Fortnite to allow adult characters to shoot at and attack kids. And yeah, I just feel a little weird about that, to say the least. It just feels a little weird. A rating has leaked, and an unannounced Life is Strange sequel with strong language and drug use. I liked basically the first episode of Life is Strange, and I have not seen any interest in doing any more Life is Strange. If this game, Life is Strange Reunion, implies that we're going to have the main characters from the first game come back, then maybe that would be slightly more interesting, but probably not. I believe also there's another game in the middle there, Life is Strange Before the Storm, that was like a prequel, so there might be a reason to play that too if I was going to go down the path of playing Life is Strange games. But there are Life is Strange True Colors. I don't think there's any reason to play that. And in Life is Strange 2, I don't think there's any reason to play that. Really, I just don't think there's a reason I would want to play any of them. The concept was interesting at first, and the character that was being depicted at first made some sense, but there's a real good reason to not go any further with it and stick with it. It just wasn't done well enough. Anyways, I'm losing my train of thought here. I need to hurry up before I start babbling and falling asleep. And I really do wake up, and then I have maybe 2 or 3 good hours in me before I'm starting to fall asleep again. Maybe that's why I'm getting so much furniture moved, is it doesn't take that much brain work to move a piece of furniture. Although I probably am digging up walls and scratching things too much, and even moving the furniture. Like I have this way too long musician's computer desk that is half disassembled, and I have nothing I can do with it. It's way too big. I'd never use it. It has a whole bunch of CD, DVD, tape players, Laserdisc player. It has like a full setup, and I don't have any need for any of that stuff at all. And I can't put a Laserdisc player in the garage, otherwise it will just get ruined without putting it in a hermetically sealed bin or something. Blizzard will reportedly reveal a StarCraft shooter from the former Far Cry boss later this year. The project is reportedly being led by former Ubisoft lead Dan Hay. Well, I don't know if now is any better a time than decades previous when they last tried to make a Far Cry first-person shooter. I mean a StarCraft first-person shooter. Why did I say Far Cry? Yeah. If you're going to make anything that says StarCraft, it really should be a real-time strategy game. And I'd be very excited if they did make a new real-time strategy StarCraft game. I don't know if it would be much different. it is kind of crazy that they haven't tried to cram AI into real-time strategy, because it might work. And I hate to say that out loud, but it might very well be the case that if you could directly talk to a AI and tell it to take a certain base or send troops in a certain direction, that might make real-time strategy management a little bit easier. And honestly, I don't know how much AI really needs to be in it, just that maybe it would be able to understand commands vocally, where you could say build more troops, flank left, flank right, things like that. You'd still have mouse controls for precise orders and movements, but you could double your actions per second potentially by talking also, or you wouldn't have to scroll back to a base to train more troops. Things like that might optimize a real-time strategy experience. I was just remembered too, I saw an article on Reddit. Apparently an esports player who has been known as an esports player for years has just been caught as having never actually played a single game ever. Apparently that they were just hiring somebody else to play the games for them, and then they were just reacting to the face cam like they were playing, and it wasn't until they were actually forced to meet up and play somebody one-on-one did they realize that this person wasn't actually an esports player and couldn't play the games. And obviously it was a very pretty, I think, female presenting person, so. And further along the discussion on Reddit, they talked about how, like, Snoop Dogg at one time was playing games and he would just actively take his hands off the controllers and roll up a marijuana joint, and still the action was still going on. And that apparently it is fairly common for people to remote in and play games while somebody else is doing the face cam. In fairness, I could see why that might work too. Like, I could see myself being a capable gamer playing, but not a particularly pretty person, so if I was partnering up with a face cam model, I don't know how you can do that in a more honest, legitimate way, though. And unless you're already a pretty big celebrity, why not just have the face cam reaction model person doing reaction videos of other people's gameplay? I guess it doesn't feel quite as personal there, but yeah. This kind of stuff does seem to happen. Our last Video Games Chronicle article is PlayStation has revealed its boldest controllers and console yet, the Hyperpop collection. Which, yeah, bright, vivid colors, except for weird blackness at the top of them, which I really don't like. Yeah, I would much prefer just it to be pure red or green or blue. Yeah. And we will leave it at that. Moving on to the Komatsu articles. Now, the Brew Barons is now available for the PS5. It is a simulation game, apparently. Let's see, let's zoom this up a little bit. You can see that recently it's at 56% positive. Overall, it's at 76% positive. Doesn't look terrible, but I suspect there's just not that much here. Although the visuals don't give me that information. Let's go down to the reviews and see what the problem is. It may be just that it doesn't perform particularly well. AI voice acting. AI voice acting. AI. Control issues, seems like. So overall, it seems like the AI voice acting is the problem. Which at a certain level, AI voice acting is just text to speech. And yeah. Even though I plan on using text to speech to make my YouTube shorts. My YouTube shorts are also YouTube shorts, not a finished product. I would never want to use text to speech in a finished product. Even if I was giving it away for free, let alone if I was selling it between $22 and $12. So yeah, I can see why that's not being received well. I imagine that's just really annoying to listen to. Love Our Kiss Endless Memories Nintendo Switch 2 edition launches April 30th in Japan. We'll see if this is once again one of these visual novel, though saying simulation games that doesn't come to the West. It is an interesting art style here when we see the character model of the anime girl, and that she's fairly drawn taller and more proportionate, and that may just be the way the style is going to increasingly go, that the kawaii art style as it used to be where they were shorter is going to be avoided in favor of more realistic portions. Still probably don't have the head and the eyes correct in proportions and such, but they're getting closer to that. Although I would say this sketch also looks nothing like this final product, and this final product feels like it is probably being done with a lot of computer assistance. Let's see, Lollipop Chainsaw Repop Nintendo Switch 2 edition launches March 26th in Japan. Again, this might be a thing that doesn't get released in the West, but it probably would be since it's already been released on other consoles in the West. And yes, this game on Steam is rated very positively, 91% in the last 30 days, 88% overall. So there is really no reason not to grab this at some point. Although until I know what's going on with my eyesight, I probably should put a halt on any more game purchases. I already have more games than will last me a lifetime, and particularly I'm going to have way too many if I can't actually see or play any of them. Moving on, Namakorium launches in early access on January 30th. It's an underwater cooperative real-time strategy game. Yep. Doesn't have a Steam page apparently. Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo Classics adds Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. I feel like I may have seen that game at some point. Let's see. See if this Japanese trailer for it shows us any general idea of what it looks like. Being a GameCube game, it can't be that visually polished or that big of a game. This is an amazing example of what a professional game looked like in the old days, and what 4 to 8 years of development would get you in the old days. There's been a lot of optimization there, but a strategy positional placement game like that could be made by one person in less than 4 years nowadays, and the stakes have been raised quite a bit. Let's see. Fatal Fury City of Wolves teases a Fist of the North Star collaboration. Okay. I think we'll leave it at that and not watch this trailer, just in an effort to save time. 79% positive in the last 30 days, 82% positive overall. Still does feel like it's a second tier fighting game though. Not getting anywhere as much attention I think as maybe Street Fighter and first level of fighting games aren't really getting that much attention in the first place. I think fighting games in general are going to shrink or at least not grow. Shadow of Road launches in 2026. Nippon will fall, Nippon being Japan in Japanese. Which, yeah. It's always weird when the English language translates and changes a country's name. You know what's interesting about this is this feels like a Command and Conquer Red Alert concept. Alternate history. Doesn't play like a real-time strategy. It seems like it might be a turn-based strategy placement game, but yeah. It is interesting that there isn't a StarCraft equivalent set in Asian countries, because it's right there. Like, you can have the standard human race of Japanese people using swords and shields and bows. Well, not shields as much. Then you could have a mechanical race of steampunk, and then you could have a demonic race of Oni and demons, and then the demon race could be very much like the Zerg in StarCraft. The Japanese humans would be obviously the Terrans in StarCraft, and then the mechanical steampunk race could be the aliens in StarCraft. I forget the names of them. Protos? Maybe that's the name of it. Yeah. I mean, you could basically do a art replacement of StarCraft. Yeah. But that's interesting. When I think about it, I'm not sure there are any Asian specific real-time strategy games out there. They're all turn-based. Maybe that speaks to a different style that's being appreciated, but yeah. By the time you do have a real-time strategy game that is not turn-based, you're talking something closer to League of Legends. That's more of a completely different type of game. So while this game barely interests me, it did give me an interesting idea. Of course, ideas are fun to have, not that they'll go anywhere. Duskblade gameplay trailer is available. Shatter the Shackles of Time. Yeah. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Probably it's an OBS thing, but I have stopped being able to hear the audio of these trailers while it plays. Not that it usually matters, not that the audio ever played out on the streams. Yeah. I almost made a huge mistake. I was looking for a comic book on Amazon, and I had put in the cart the Spanish version of the collection of the comics. And yeah, the English version was out of print, and I was like, oh man, if I had bought that, that would have really sucked. So I'm gonna have to be careful. And honestly, you shouldn't be buying comics from Amazon.com. They ship books and comics terribly. You just don't treat them well and package them well. But I don't know if I have a better suggestion. As for Dusk Vague, yeah, it looks interesting. There's not much more you can really say for a new game. Eternal Life of Goldman demo for PC launches in February. It features the first 90 minutes of the game. Does look like a very weird game. Yeah, I've really dropped the ball on converting to vertical. And whatever I do to convert to vertical now, it may take YouTube a month or two. There's going to be a better way, I think. Let's see. Nested Lands launches in early access for PC on January 23rd. I assume people don't really care that I bumble the words that much. Yeah, I've never had anybody hop into the comments and insult me as much as I insult myself internally for stuttering, stammering, and bumbling words. But the truth is, you have to have a pretty huge audience to get the one person that is irate or rude enough to actually say anything. 99.9% of people just stop watching if they don't like something. And as annoying as it would be for a viewer, it would be nice if there was some way that every now and then YouTube would pop up a, hey, why are you leaving this video? So we can recommend better things. If I could get some feedback there, that would be interesting, but almost certainly the default response that everybody would say is it's boring, and that would be the end of it. Like, I guess that looked alright. I don't think I was paying enough attention to it. Yeah, the dark color palettes lost me, I think, visually. There, for that game. Street Fighter 6 DLC character Alex teaser trailer is available if you want to check that out. I don't really care to. Street Fighter 6 definitely seems like the fighting game announcements come back to back. Sand Raiders of Sophie launches in March for PS5 and PC, and later for the Xbox Series. Let's see what that looks like. Walking mechanitrons that you shoot and fight each other. See, then I lose interest when I have to actually design a facility or drive the thing or repair the thing. There's a lot going on. I just don't know if I could be sold on a game like this. I might be sold on a game like this, but I just don't know. It's a very ambitious type of game to have first-person shooting and vehicle-based tank shooting and vehicle repair and driving. Yeah. Let's see. on the follow list, I guess. Avowed is coming to the PS5 on February 17th alongside an anniversary edition. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, I think Avowed has struggled in its initial launch. Yeah, you can see it's 74% in the last 30 days, 76% overall. It has a small fandom, but is definitely not a huge hit, which they definitely were hoping, I think, for this to be a huge hit. And I can't help but think that a lot of this code, considering this is Obsidian Entertainment owned by Xbox Studios, was code that could have been in an Elder Scrolls game instead. To speed up the development of the next Elder Scrolls game. Alphion, composed by Amin Bohafa. PS5 physical edition has been announced. It's apparently a musical journey. Which I won't be able to hear any of the music for. Suppose that is somewhat of a interesting idea, to take what would be perhaps a so this is a trailer just talking about the music in a regular video game. Oh, well, it wouldn't be the craziest thing to take something like a walking simulator game where you're maybe doing a little bit more climbing and jumping than just walking, and then have music set behind it. But then I think even a walking simulator would give so much control over the player that the music would never really line up without a lot of work to the events happening on screen. But that's not really what this game is. This is obviously more of a climbing game and adventure game, I think, than just a walking simulator. And this trailer's too long, and it's just someone talking to the screen, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah. And this one's already on the follow list. So Detroit Become Human sales of top 15 million. That being said, Detroit Became Human came out in 2019. So it went up to 15 million over the course of 7 years. And a big part of the problem as to why it took it that long to get to 15 million is that, one, it didn't sell itself particularly well, and two, it never really was on a good discount. Meanwhile, Quantic Dream, I don't believe, has announced any new games or made anything since Detroit Becoming Human, so I would suspect that they are a company in name only at this point and are close to laying off everybody, if not have laid off most people. There was always a problem with Quantic Dream, and it felt like the CEO really just wanted to make movies and couldn't get the funding to make movies, and instead made these video games that were cinematic, highly cinematic, and not so much video game interactive. Moving on, Towerborn launches February 26th for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Yeah, is Beyond Two Souls, another Quantic Dream game, which I do own now, but haven't gotten around to playing. Yeah, I don't know if the eyesight issue I'm having would make it perhaps easier to play more cinematic games. I mean, maybe, but probably not. It would be much more if my fingers became more arthritic and I couldn't use controllers as well. Then a cinematic game would make sense. The only kinds of games that would make more sense if my eyesight started going would be the blind games, and there's only 3 or 4 of those that I know of, where you literally don't look at the screen or do much to the screen visually. This game Towerborn is mixed in the last 30 days, and visually on the screenshots I'm not particularly too impressed, so I'm not going to put it on the follow list. Let's see, an Xbox Developer Direct 26 is set for January 22nd, Fable, Forza Horizon 6, and Beast of Reincarnation, which I don't know if I've heard of that one. Oh, this is the Game Freak game. That's the name of it, I guess. And then we talked about Connect Games establishing Connect Publishing. Mario Tennis Fever overview trailer is available on Gamatsu, and there's a trailer if you want to watch it. Then we've got the Famitsu sales from the 22nd to the 28th of December, updated, where we can see that even if sales were 30% down overall, Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 are still dominating in Japan. Do we see a single PlayStation game? Ghost of Yotai is in the 27th spot, and that is it. Yeah, there's only one PlayStation game that sold during that season. Now, is that particularly a big season for Japan? I don't really think so. I don't think they really buy gifts and things like that for Christmas in Japan. So, if anything, they might be going to winter festivals and spending their money doing other things. They do have like a little snowman contest and things like that, but I don't feel like Japanese have room for a Christmas tree. And I don't believe they buy Christmas gifts like that and exchange Christmas gifts. I've never seen anything like that happen. Yeah. Hardware sales haven't really changed either. Nintendo still really dominating. It has been the same story very consistently for at least a year, probably 2 or 3, as far as PlayStation really just not competing with Nintendo in their home country of Japan. Let's see, JDM Japanese Drift Master for PS5 launches February 6th. It's currently already available for the Xbox Series and PC. Yeah. And yeah, it's mostly positive. So why am I keeping this on the fall list and not adding it to the wish list? There's no reason not to move it to the wish list. Yeah. The new Japanese Prime Minister is pushing the idea of anime being a big thing, but then I also saw an article that anime is losing its younger audience too. And then the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion came out in an article and said, yeah, anime should be for Japanese people first, and that any foreigners who like anime must adapt their sentimentalities and their desires to appreciate what we're creating, not the other way around, which that is definitely a big internal argument where there's a lot of companies that are willing to effectively sell out and have localization teams change the meanings and the interpretations of words and ideas to play out in other countries, on top of other countries straight up censoring anime in crazy ways, and sometimes not so crazy ways, but still censoring them nonetheless. But yeah, anime in general I don't think should go mainstream. It's already too mainstream in my opinion. Moving on to video game news. Nova Antarctica launches January 29th. This is several trailers in several different languages. Yet another survival game. We may be starting to see a slowdown in survival games, which I wouldn't be opposed to that. They were definitely the fad for a long time there. Silver Palace Monotype beta test gameplay showcase. This was we saw a trailer for this game a couple of weeks ago. It was somewhat interesting in the teaser trailer, but it wasn't really showing any gameplay. But yeah, increasingly we're seeing companies try this 3D CGI over textures that are more colorful and anime-like. So you can walk around, you can look and interact with other people's conversations sometimes, and I actually want to see them do something more than just walk around. You can change the outfits, characters, and you can play as different characters, and this one has all kinds of magical creatures following them. So as far as a gameplay showcase, they are failing to show actual gameplay. They're just having characters wander around what are probably pre-rendered environments that are not actually showing anything at all. Yeah. This is the kind of thing, first of all, the dishonesty in saying this is a gameplay showcase when this really should be closer to a character showcase, or walking demo might be a better description. Yeah. The fact that there are several characters here makes me feel like it might just be a MMO or something where you can play as several different characters or make your own character. Yeah. If this is actually the gameplay, this is an awful game, because the gameplay of moving the camera around and watching a character walk around is incredibly boring. Alright, so how many minutes in? 2.5 minutes of a 5-minute video before they actually show you a menu, which as far as I can tell it looks like this is a JRPG, but this might be more of a gacha game too. Yeah. I wouldn't say this art style is in any way consistent. I'm trying to make too many cutesy characters all stand out. Let's see. Let's jump forward. And it looks like there's just a conversation cutscene. And so it's like 4 minutes in before you see that it is even an action-based RPG type experience where you're fighting characters. The fighting here is great, so if they had just taken this small 30 seconds and said that was the gameplay showcase, then that would have worked way better as far as honesty goes. But yeah, they have actually countered any enthusiasm that I might have had for this game just by dishonesty and showing very little of what is actual gameplay and then labeling it gameplay. This is why words are important, certainly. So yeah, I am less hyped around monotype. Let's just end this here now than when before. Moving on, Hatsune Miku Logic Paint S Plus free update and paid DLC Snow Miku Skytown has been announced. Is this some kind of puzzle game? I think it probably is a Pictocross paint by number type game, although this screenshot certainly doesn't give me any clue as to what kind of game it is. See, PUBG Blind Spot launches in early access on February 5th. Okay. Yep. Hatsune Miku Logic Paint S Plus is a Pictocross game. Does it actually support English? Says it does. Is it worth $12? Probably not. Here's PUBG Blind Spot. Put that on the follow list. This is a 5 versus 5 top-down tactical shooter. Very different from other PUBG games. Let's see, Sea of Remnants Wanderer alpha test phase set for February 5th to the 12th. This is a odd visuals we're seeing here. Yeah, I would have thought that this was some kind of pirate game, but we're now seeing puppet characters. So is this Wanderer DLC going in a different direction? We have a voodoo lady of some sort. Warning there to wear headphones. So yeah, what the game looks like up previously now seems to be completely different. You're just on this island of puppet people. And you're playing Mahjong. You're cheating at Mahjong. Playing Russian roulette. Drinking games. So I suspect this is some small test demo vertical slice where whatever you do has very little to do with what the rest of the game is. Now weirdly though, this might catch my attention more than just your average pirate game, because there's been a ton of pirate games and none of them have been particularly interesting. The fact that there's a race even there, or a couple of races, is interesting. It's not realistic, but who cares? What might kill a game like this though is if it is one of these you have to have friends to play with you experiences, which Sea of Thieves was a great example of a game that only works if you have a bunch of friends to play with you, and has only been really popular amongst the employees of people who are actually developing the game. And yeah, there might very well be a case where Major Nelson, back when he was in charge of Xbox, was playing Sea of Thieves so much that he was giving it too much attention in general and kind of forcing people, even if he didn't realize he was doing it, to play with him. So the internal Xbox employees may very well have not even really liked Sea of Thieves as much as they did, but they were not comfortable to come out and say, hey, this game is played out, I'm tired of playing it. But yeah, you don't have that problem too often, but I could see it popping up every now and then where you just are not comfortable speaking your opinion or critically reviewing a game. Plus, if you work on a game and they're developing a game, then you're going to fall in love with it way more than the person who's only going to give it an hour and a half before they decide whether they like it or not. I will say though, if the entirety of this game is puppet people, that just feels like that would be weird. Yeah. That would feel very strange. Although, you might also call it boldly artistic to say, hey, we're going to just have an animation style where everybody is a puppet. Marionette type puppet, I suppose is what I mean when I say puppet. Which I guess, if you think about it, nowadays when you say puppet, people probably are not thinking marionettes. But in the old days, marionettes were what a puppet would be, far before they made sock puppets and felt muppets and things like that. Alright, this is too long to watch this entire trailer though. Yep. And I feel like that is perhaps why some of my streams in the past have been too long, as I sit here and watch the entire trailer. And if everything is a puppet, that is an interesting art style to just admit that you don't have a good visual renderer, so you can reduce the polygon count and have better performance by making the humans look less human. So I really don't know if the totality of Sea of Remnants is puppets or not, though. I kind of would have liked to have that locked down as an answer. Life is Strange Reunion rated in Europe, which who knows, maybe it is just yet another remaster and remake. It might be the case too. Here's Life is Strange Double Exposure, one I've completely forgotten about. When did this come out? In 2024? Yeah, this is the same character from the first game. So it was Life is Strange. Life is Strange Before the Storm came out after Life is Strange 2, which doesn't include Max Caulfield. And then there's another Life is Strange after Before the Storm that also, I don't believe, included Max Caulfield. So the series has gone in crazy circles. And yeah, the Life is Strange series always got a lot of high praise from mainstream video game journalists, but I don't think it really got a lot of coverage, or a lot of people playing it in general. Yeah. So Life is Strange Remastered. True Colors was the second to most recent one, 2021. So after True Colors, they released the first game remastered. Life is Strange 2 was the two boys. Life is Strange Episode 1 was really the only episode I want. The Free Captain Spirit was a prequel side story to Life is Strange 2. I never actually played it. Before the Storm, I never bought. And I do think it has Max in it. So they really made a huge mess. This is Before the Storm Remastered. I think it is. Yeah. They made a real mess of the whole series. Meanwhile, if you were going to play something, Dispatch is almost certainly a better offering to play. Let's move on. Then Sea of Remnants. Is this a MMORPG? No, it says it's single player with in-app purchases. And it does seem like it might just be puppets throughout the whole game. So I would generally have assumed that when I looked at this, I dismissed it just for being yet another pirate game. And it still feels like it might be yet another pirate game, but there might very well be something different there. Moving on to gaming on Linux. Let's move on. Steam Frame and Steam Machines will be another good boost for flat packs and desktop Linux overall too. With Steam Frame and Steam Machines launching with SteamOS Linux this year, we're going to again see a nice boost for flat packs and desktop Linux overall. This is pretty much an opinion piece. But yeah, the idea of flat packs and sandboxing, particularly for games, works pretty well. And it works pretty well for most apps. There still are some apps that still kind of suffer because they just don't have enough low-level access, and there aren't enough APIs to skirt around the need for low-level access, root-level access to the hardware. SteamOS takes it one step further in Flatpaks because they also have an immutable operating system based off of Arch Linux running. So even if you do have root access and make changes, as soon as SteamOS updates itself, those changes are going to be undone. They are working to make Flatpaks become more accessible to some of those low-level needs through API calls instead of direct access. But yeah, it'll take a while. There is also perhaps a problem in that Flatpaks are pretty much exclusively hosted on FlatHub, which is basically the website repository, and there's still not quite enough security and not enough redundancy as far as where you could get different applications and whether or not you want to trust those applications are actually being made by the people who say they're making it and are being made in a 100% safe way. If you were using Debian or Ubuntu, you would have been installing things using .devs, which are pretty easy. But then it gets more difficult if you were using Fedora and RPMs. And then the most difficult is just building things from source. you know, the 3D print of the Steam Deck itself is going to probably be maybe the fourth or fifth thing I try to print out, with maybe some slight designs. Like, the easiest thing to do would be to cut out a slot in the top and turn this into a piggy bank for saving money. Not that people have cash to save money on. The smarter thing, I think, is to put a cutout for a frame for a speaker here and a speaker here, and have left and right and then Atmos up speakers that you could install left, right. I mean, you could do a full 9.2 setup or without the dots. A subwoofer speaker grill at the bottom is going to be more demanding, and frankly, doing all of that is going to be acoustically a nightmare. But it's an interesting thought to have speakers that look like Steam machines to be taking up the same amount of space as a Steam machine. I'm not sure if there can be really any kind of fancy mount or holder for the Steam controller, considering the magnetic charger receiver that snaps to the back of it. It's designed to lay flat on the table, so if you are going to make a holder for the Steam controller, you're going to have to make a cutout to hold the magnetic charger connector in place. And I don't care anything about the Steam frame itself. Moving on, city builder Nova Roma from the devs of Kingdoms and Castles has been delayed until March. I'll leave it at that. Yep. Again, getting delayed doesn't really scare me that much. Let's see. The developer of the popular drug dealing sim Schedule 1 expands thanks to the success. We can only hope that they will expand to make bigger and better games, and that it isn't just the case that they make Schedule 1, 2, or other kinds of slightly trolly, slightly silly games. We may very well find that small successes for some companies leads to them not doing anything particularly great with that success. You have to admit, though, it is overwhelmingly positive, so the audience is there. People are getting what they expected and are in no way unhappy about it. As a YouTube content creator, though, I don't think I could ever cover this game, so can't really do much with it. Boss Lords and Architects of Ruin from Hooded Horse look great as they refuse to sign AI art. So the publisher is Hooded Horse, and they've got an announcement trailer for 2 different games. Okay. Architect of Ruin looks interesting, certainly. It is one of these art styles that you could see if it was done poorly by 2 or 3 measures, it would just be dismissed as an RPG Maker looking game. But the level of detail, and the hand animation feel makes it stand out in the few screenshots they are showing me. Yeah. And yeah, I can't say much more than that. Let's see. Minecraft is getting a cute overhaul with baby mobs. Not sure how many people are still in the Minecraft, but who knows. I mean, if the Minecraft movie is to say anything, there's still some level of fandom there. So baby cows, sheep, pigs, cats, ocelots, mushrooms, wolves and chickens, rabbits, and armor on baby wolves and saddle on baby pigs will no longer render. I think they had baby chickens before. But I'm not sure. There was a lot of other baby things. But then the babies, I assume, are still just going to grow up fairly quickly. Yeah. You'd have like a baby cow, and then you would feed it wheat very quickly. It would grow up into an adult cow. And there wasn't really anything special about having the baby animals or locking animals into staying as babies, which I'm not sure that you can still do that. So it doesn't seem like you can have a pet baby versions. Cosmetic changes basically is all this is, I think. Which is a nice ad, but it does probably also speak to Minecraft running out of ideas as far as what they can add. Let's see, the Steam Client Beta adds a revamped interface for opting into game betas and other changes. It looks like it is just a little bit of a tweak. And then it looks like in the changelog there's a few other tweaks. Which, yeah. It's nice how consistently they're putting out updates. It's a shame that they don't ever really put out any new features too much. SteamOS 3.7.20 adds the NT-Sync driver to help improve some game performance. That is going to be a big feature, I think. Let's see. And there's something weird there. I don't even know what it is. The NT-Sync driver is most interesting as it's something that arrived with the Linux kernel 6.14 back in March of 2025. It's a way of matching closer to Windows NT synchronization primitives to provide accuracy and good performance, especially for Windows games on Linux running through a compatibility layer. Proton already had something similar to it using with FSync, but the original Wine project that Proton is built from added support for NT-Sync back in Wine 10.16, so you may see Proton 11 whenever it releases use it by default. So everything might be just getting on the same page. More than likely, I wouldn't be surprised if Proton switches between NT-Sync and FSync based on individual game profile performance reports. There is definitely some stuff being going on right now with Linux, particularly with CachyOS, where they are doing some low-level driver changes to get a lot more performance, specifically for gaming. So yeah, it's not only a case that Microsoft is just irritating people and pushing them away from Windows. It is also the case that in the past couple of years, performance of Linux to play games is improving considerably. Let's see. Linero, not a company I recognize, revealed that they're collaborating with Valve for the Steam frame. But yeah, apparently we don't really know what they're doing as part of that. So it's an intriguing little tidbit. You can't really say anything else more around that. What happened there? Microprose recently revealed the first-person Mecha Sim Steel Bounty. That's from Gaming on Linux. Then we're same story again, and then Steel Bounty here on Steam is not a particularly impressive game, so I wouldn't even bother to make a YouTube short on it. The 1 to 4 player co-op hack and slash dungeon crawler Dungeon Rampage gets revived on Steam. Apparently it was a Flash game originally. Interesting, so let's see what it looks like. So it was originally taken offline in 2017. Yeah, there is... This video doesn't want to load and play. There's definitely a decent number of Flash games that just kind of got lost. That being said, I'm not sure that any of them really were that popular. I do not recognize this game in any way. It does look like something from decades ago. It would be something that I would immediately dismiss if I saw on Steam as far as just not being polished enough. Yeah. If you wanted to play a game like this, Castle Crashers would probably run smoother. It would have a larger canvas size. You can see that the scale here is really small. So yeah, if you didn't have any kind of fandom for it, I would think you would dismiss this. And yet I have to eat my own words here, as apparently I put it on the following list. And it is rated very positively in early access, so yeah. Of 2,100 players, 93% are positive. There was apparently more demand for this than I thought. So maybe that is a case where we will see more Flash games come back, and hidden gems from the past might come back to Steam. Probably is pretty hard to get a Flash game to run these days, and that might be a big problem, because the whole thing about making Flash games is it was easy. Flash games were the RPG makers of a previous generation, and it was just easy to develop a game without having to get into the low-level programming of it. And the problem there is once Flash revealed itself to be full of security holes and got shut down and no longer supported, then all of those Flash files couldn't really be run. Moving on, Valve has updated the Steam Workshop to allow mods to support multiple game versions. So now I guess you don't need a specific mod version for every single version of the game, even though it probably would be better if you did have your mod version be unique to every version of the game. It might not really matter in most cases. For instance, the Star Wars lightsabers mod for Gary's mod probably doesn't change too much from one version of the source engine to the next, or one version of Gary's mod from the next. Moving on, wire up various modules to survive in Wireworks. I can see that catching my attention. Apparently it's a native Linux app too. There is something to the art style that really is a turn-off, I would say. So I'm not sure I'd really fall in love with this. Of course, we can wait and see what other people say. Dig Dig Die sounds like a hilarious grave-robbing co-op horror game. I'll leave it at that. We'll look at it on Steam. Yeah. I'll make a YouTube short on this, but I'm not particularly interested in it myself. And then the popular mobile creature collector Evo Creo is now available on PC. Another creature collector game that is undoubtedly going to be compared to something like Pokemon. Unfortunately, we can see that it is 55% positive with 20 user reviews. So let's scroll down and see what the problem is. Let's see. Game crashes too much to be able to complete it, and it in turn recommended. Can't recommend it in the current state. It's not early access, it's full release. Bare bones port. Mobile slop, quite buggy at that. Well, this is something new. When did we start getting recently posted as reviews? Yeah. Apparently, that's a new thing as far as reviews go. Yeah, that's a problem, to say the least. To release a game in a non-early access state and it be crashy and buggy. You know, people desperately would love a Pokemon-like game, and to deliver so poorly is just frankly insane. Moving on to GameDeveloper.com. It's cancerous, quote unquote. Manor Lord's publisher Hooded Horse wants to avoid Gen AI like the plague. There's a longer article here if you want to read it. I think cancerous is probably a good explanation on what it is, as far as just the idea of generative AI being spreading like wildfire, like cancer amongst the game industry. Let's see. The Communication Workers of America, Canada, Canada is still part of America, North America even, is seeking answers from Ubisoft lawyers over the Halifax closure. Typically in cases where employers are planning for big layoffs, they share that info with the union in confidence before announcing it. So yeah, this is the other almost certainly union busting action that's going on, and it's going to lead to long-running lawsuits and disappointing results at the end of it, I'm sure. Ghost of Yotai and Clair Obscura Expedition 33 headline the 2026 DICE Award nominees. Text is a little bit easier here so we can scroll down and see if there's anything here. Increasingly, I want to play the Blueprints, but I just don't know if I'm going to go out of my way to buy it at a non-discount. I'd like to see Midnight Walk still win a few more awards, although I don't think it's going to really help it that much. Like, even if Midnight Walk had won tons and tons of awards, I don't think Microsoft is going to fund that type of game being developed ever again. I don't know if Baby Steps actually came out all the way, or is it, I thought it was still in early access. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. Let's see. There's a report that the GameStop-owned EB Games proposes closing all of its New Zealand stores. The proposal would reportedly affect 38 remaining stores in the region. Which, yeah. It's not going to be good for New Zealand, certainly. It is weird that there still are video game stores in existence, and GameStop is really a pawn shop more than it is a video game store. They said years ago that they were going to try and get more into merchandise and stuff like that, but I don't think they really succeeded or stuck to that plan. I don't think anybody is going to GameStops around the world and finding t-shirts and Funko Pops and things like that. Yeah, that's another thing. I hate Funko Pops with a passion, but if you can find something to 3D print around Funko Pops or Stanley mugs, like that might sell very well on an Etsy storefront. Let's see. Phasmophobia developer Kinetic Games launches an indie publishing label. Monument Valley dev Us2 becomes PC first studio. Us2 says Netflix and Apple are not a solid base to build a long-term business around, which I guess they had tried both Netflix and Apple to sell their Monument Valley games from whatever else they had made. Now, if they are going to be PC first, they're going to have to make something a little bit bigger, or they're going to have to sell at a very low price, because Monument Valley is a fine game, but it really is just a mobile game. It's not something that's interesting enough in its gameplay mechanics or interesting enough in its story to compete with PC games. Then there's the update to Ubisoft closing the Halifax studio weeks after union workers vote to unionize. The update here says CWA Canada says it will pursue every legal recourse to defend union members impacted by the closure of the studios. And then we're back to gaming on Linux articles for some reason. Humble Bundle have a nice collection of games for handhelds. Which, okay. I will leave it at that. Ultra Kill is getting mentioned. I don't think I really would want to play a game like Ultra Kill though. And then we're to all the new games on Steam, so let's go through those quickly and wrap up this stream. So again, when I am sweeping downward like this, I'm closing the tab. If I sweep this way, I'm leaving the tab open. If I'm really interested in the game, I'll put it on the follow list. Leaving the game open is so I can make a YouTube short on it later. Still not super locked down into the right settings for my alternating pressure seat cushion. And the one I have on my bed, if it slides off the edge, it seems like all the pressure gets put on the part that slide off the edge, so it just goes flat on the part that I'm actually lying on. Hey, we have a yaoi boys love game on Steam as far as a visual novel. You don't see too many of those as far as guy on guy stories on Steam in particular. There's a lot more, I think, than you would think. Available and made. Maybe a lot of them just don't come out in English. And I will say in Japan that there is a general assumption that a lot of the boys love and yaoi visual novels are being read by women, not guys. But who knows who's reading what in privacy of their own homes. Also seeing an ever increase of live action ones. This is a Taiwanese live action full motion video, so probably still visual novels, the right word to say there. So yeah, the cushion on my bed is either sliding off the edge and all the pressure is being put on the part you're not laying on and it's just going flat, or there's a hole in it, which there might be a hole in it, which I wouldn't be 100% surprised. Like, I have tried not to flop down on it with all of my weight, but also I certainly am not going to be incredibly delicate we have another yaoi story. English and Korean this time. I don't know why I'm putting these on the fault lists. Yeah, I don't know if I really should be making YouTube shorts around them. Out of just an abundance of caution, it makes a lot of sense to maybe not make YouTube shorts around them. So this does feel like this may be the first week where we're starting to see a lot more visual novels, and I don't know. I'm mentally exhausted, obviously, because I'm putting a lot of them on the follow list. Do I think there's really a game here? Maybe. It's a Survivor's clone where you're playing as a hillbilly shooting demons, which that's basically what Duke Nukem is. Definitely seeing too many Survivor's clones. I don't think there's a game here. Yep. I am definitely hitting that next stage of being mentally exhausted. It really is just a question as far as what is the thing that is going to finally break me from looking at all of these new games that came out on Steam. I really like it in concept, but I kind of hate it in reality. This one looks like this is an adult game, so I'm not going to show it on screen. Yep. It's just overwhelming amounts of work. This is an odd art style. I don't think it really works for a fighting game. Fighting games, I think, just need sharper outlines than this. Now, if it was a slower game, I think this art style might work just fine, but yeah. Anything that's going to require actually seeing the characters moving fast is not going to work with that kind of fuzziness. Here it seems like you're the gunman who's running into a lot of prostitutes, for lack of a better term. Open world RPG, but single player. Really late if you were going to buy an advent calendar. We are way past Christmas at this point. We're seeing more Chinese games also. I'm going to say no to that just because visually it's not polished enough. Give that a chance. Yeah. You know what might break me is talking. Which is not something I'd thought about before, but if I could just go silent, if I could just mute myself while looking at all the new games and play some music, then maybe that would save some energy. Because I do feel like I'm often... Nah, I'm going to say no to that. I'm often just feeling this need to comment on the games or say something, and I really should be commenting and saying something, but then there really is a lot of games here that are just not comment worthy. This one doesn't support English. This one's already on the following list. That one actually might have been something. Give that a chance. Close that. Give that a chance. Probably nothing here. Probably nothing here. I'll give it a chance. Just too generous. Now none of my actions seem to want to activate. Cozy Caravan looks good, but it's already on the follow list. Here we've got another adult game that, I mean, they just are not putting them in the adult section. And I know for a fact that it's not like I'm looking at games in the adult section. I don't know at what point that's going to come to a head. So here's a trading card game store simulator, except for this time it's probably AI generated anime girls in the trading card game instead of any actual trading cards. But yeah. There are real card games out there available that have anime girls if you're interested in that. One of the things about Trading Card Shop, I believe is the actual name of the game that Game Grumps is playing, is it is based off of real cards of a real game. As another thing I wonder about 3D printing, is there a possible way with extrusion printing to make really cheap, really thin playing cards of any kind, whether it's just your standard 52 card ace through jack, king, queen deck, or whether it would be more of a collectible card game. Which, yeah, I guess the question to ask there is, if you had some kind of 3D printing collectible card game, could you possibly have some kind of QR code on the back of it that would lead to a unique download of another 3D print? That's an interesting thought. That was even bigger. Yeah, or rarer. Yeah, there might be a whole synergy there if you can make it look good, and if you could do it particularly in one color. So artistically you would have this monochromatic theme that you would have to play on. And I don't know if 3D printers, extrusion printers, even the best, really can get a level of detail in a monochromatic chromatic theme. Yeah. One of the bigger things about collectible card games more recently is the ability to print on clear cards and have cards stack on top of each other and have see-through elements. Whereas you could have done that with a cutout before, but they never really tried, as far as I know. Of course, the hardest part about any collectible card game is just making it popular enough that people would play it in the first place, and then making it good enough that people would actually want to play it after the fact of it being popular enough to get people to try it. It still is very much the case that the largest majority, some of these are not games that just came out. Some of these are based on articles they saw before. And they're in the wrong place. Yeah. But yeah, it's still very much Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Command and Pokemon TCG are the main games. Yeah. In days like this, I definitely don't have energy to try to do any flawless cleanup at all. So, yeah. I think we'll just end it there, and that'll be it for this show. Yeah. Again, apologies for starting late, apologies for not really being as alert and awake as I should be. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment,